Greetings, players, dungeon keepers, nature channel enthusiasts. My name is Lane McLeod Jackson, and don't look under the floorboards. In our last couple of episodes, we met and spent some time with Ethil Sweettongue, an aged green hag who has spent her lifetimes traveling from place to place, morphing into other types of hags and collecting various items for mischief and power. She's finally returned to Porous Hollow, her old hometown, in order to become a vicious night hag and destroy her mortal enemy in one fell swoop. So we have her character and her goals, but in the parlance of the performer, what are her tactics? Hey, me too, folks. No worries. Now, hags are solitary creatures, but that does not mean she's above manipulating other monsters for help, either as temporary alliances or just building them. Now, I'm not going to lie, there's a ton of great supplementary material for hags. You can look at their section in Volo's Guide, or the supplementary material from Pathfinder, or Edward Turner's Fey Compendium 2, which is all about hags. And myself, I'm going to limit myself to creatures whose stat blocks you can find in the core rule books and extrapolate using our imagination. The power of imagination! But check out that Fey Compendium 2. It's got a lot of great stuff in it. I really love its list of hag items. Now, our hag's a flexible creature, and she'll take whatever help she can get. So the kind of monsters populating this moor are dependent on the location. This is always an important question. What kind of atmosphere are we in? Over the green squares of the fields and the low curve of a wood, there rose in the distance a grey, melancholy hill with a strange, jagged summit, dim and vague in the distance like some fantastic landscape in a dream. Down to the Baskervilles, my favorite 19th century moor. Now, when you live in a moor, at first they do seem desolate, full of emptiness, but it's only once you get past the first level of fog that you realize how filled with life they truly are. Birds of all kinds live here, especially the merlin. Snakes such as the adder slither about the grass, but we can choose vipers from all over the world to inhabit this place. So if we're stealing from Sherlock Holmes, which I like to do frequently and often, we can use lines from the Speckled Band. Deer, otters, crawfish, snipes, all of these live in the moors, and through the magic of the D&D world can be made larger than they should. In other words, this is the kind of environment to spend some time in the animal section of the monster manual. The Fae are also a powerful force in these misty moors, but not necessarily a helpful one, either to your players or to your hag. That being said, even though they may have their prejudices against poor Ethil, she has been around long enough to know how to deal with Fae and possibly manipulate them to her own ends, such as letting a local satyr pack know where a wedding feast might be taking place, convincing a lumberyard that the magic of the Dryad's tree is worth upsetting its mystical guardian, crushing sprites or pixies' homes and letting them loose on the evil population. And joining the hag as instigator, people often most fear an internal enemy when an outside presence is very real. Let's say about 10 years ago there was a sweep of orcish raids that sort of decimated this part of the kingdom. Now, Porous Hill itself was never affected, but the families of various refugees have gathered in this village and remember those tales. And the tension between the new villagers and the old ones creates a kind of friction. Meanwhile, there's still a smattering of orcish warbands out there, always ready to become a threat. So while all these forces do not work for the hag directly, she is very good at pulling various strings to either create a distraction or maybe have them come after you. Ethil isn't forced to rely on the kindness of strangers. She does have some allies on which she can depend. Scarecrows are replaced with hurt devilish constructs, and if the players are paying attention, maybe they'll find a dissected imp that was used to power these newest minions. An ogre that lives on the moors that she feeds and flatters and will use against the heroes. Then, because it is sent in this environment, I want to draw on the Hound of the Baskervilles. A hound it was, an enormous coal-black hound, but not such a hound as mortal eyes have ever seen. Fire burst from its open mouth, its eyes glowed with a smouldering glare, its muzzle and hackles and dewlap were outlined in flickering flame. Never in the delirious dream of a disordered brain could anything be more savage, more appalling, more hellish be conceived than that dark form and savage face which broke upon us all out of a wall of fog. I will state for the record that Volo's does have a Shadow Mastiff, which is perfect for this, but I did promise core rulebook options. So there's the death dog, and it's got an extra head, which is always fun. There's the warg statistics, but instead of a wolf-like creature, it's got the tracks of a gigantic hound. A big Sherlock Holmes fan. And the hag has also made an alliance with Evelyn McCormack, who is a 12-year-old girl with a dark secret. I'm gonna turn into a hag. Cough. Cough. She's a kid hag. Cough. For our hag, information is critical. She has to have a way to keep an eye on the people around town and your players. She's not in a coven. She can't scry, which means the way she gathers information can be disrupted, and your player should be given the opportunity to do that. And the hag, in turn, must adjust. These can include a collection of dolls spread around town that Ethil is able to possess, a collection of ears that have been hidden in various rooms throughout the town, but they're sort of hardwired together like Christmas lights, so if one goes missing, the entire network is brought down. Not to mention her own Fae-given powers to create illusions and turn invisible. Style of this game, and Ethil's spiderweb of minions, informants, and power does not lend itself to one large dungeon where everything happens. Of course, she's got a home. We can fight there, and it will be discussed eventually. The so-called dungeons are everywhere in this town. Inside the village, the wilderness, in empty rooms you thought were safe but a moment ago. All of these can become encounters for violence. We're discussing hag lore and locations. We have to talk about the Bell Witch. The Bell Witch is an American folktale, and it's sort of a hodgepodge of all sorts of things. It combines scapegoating, poltergeists, witches, and even a cameo from Andrew Jackson. Also, I'm keeping the name. The Bell House is just fantastic. The folks of Porous Hill, the house has been haunted since long before Ethil returned to the marshes. The house is vitally important. There is a ghost who lives in there, and the ghost is able to enter the ethereal realm. She is one of the key ingredients for Ethil's Heartstone. And who is this poor ghost? Well, once upon a time, her name was Gladys Bell, and she was tricked by Ethil into becoming a warlock. Living her life, she was corrupted and finally murdered at the hands of the various villagers. And as Ethil grows in power and influence throughout the village, the ghost becomes more furious and less human. The Bell House is a large estate with many rooms that can be filled with nice knickknacks and a couple of pieces of treasure, but it's not one you need to explore. The ghost is not hiding. This is less a physical journey and more an emotional one. The player should be guided through the life story of Gladys and learn the lessons she had to the hard way. If they do this right, the ghost will either disappear on its own or be weakened for the final fight, which is to everyone's advantage because this house is not natural. As Shirley Jackson might describe it. No live organism can continue for long to exist sanely under conditions of absolute reality. Even larks by some are said to dream. Hill House, not staying, stood by itself against its hills, holding darkness within. It had stood so for 80 years and might stand for 80 more. Within, walls continued upright. Bricks met neatly, floors were firm, and doors were sensibly shut. Silence lay steadily against the wood and stone of Hill House, and whatever walked there walked alone. And your players are going to wish they were alone. But network aside, Ethil still needs a place to call home, and your players can track her down there, either using clues spread throughout the village or by a little bit of magic. And she'll be there waiting for you. This is the place where she's going to finalize the ritual. This is where she's gathered items of power to destroy your players or maybe tempt them away. And she occasionally catches a catnap. Now, the home itself looks like a yard with fencing and a large caravan that has crashed into the trunk of a giant willow tree. And this is going to provide you 3 areas of play. Our homely little courtyard's going to have skin drying on the line, items of dark magic for sale, and a few hellhounds or whatever that she can toss your way. 2, inside the caravan itself. Now, this is larger than it should be, but it's still a small, claustrophobic fighting place. And she's going to have magic items that she can sick on you when she wants. 3rd is the inner chamber, which is in the roots of this gigantic tree. And it allows her an opportunity to escape up the trunk if your heroes don't get to her first. Now, before I leave you, I'd like to give you a taste of the dread that these layers can invoke. again found in the poem about the black anise. Out without terror they the cave survey, where hung the monstrous trophies of her sway. 'Tis said that the rock large rooms were found, scooped with her claws beneath the flinty ground. In these the swains her hated body threw, but left the entrance still to future view, that children's children might the tale rehearse, and bards record it to their tuneful verse. Good day, and everybody remember, break legs in your players' hearts.